Hello everyone, welcome back to Rolling Solo. My name is Adam Smith. We are playing Deep Madness, and this is part number 1. If you haven't already checked out the solo setup video, be sure to do so. We will be making a couple corrections, which I noted in the pinned comment from that solo setup. They're fairly minor, but they'll actually make a nice impact to the visual look of the game board when it's set up. So I'm going to make those corrections now. Then we're going to move into the more prepared team variant, which was overwhelmingly said in the comments that I should go ahead and do, mainly because of the fact we have ramped up the difficulty by adding an epic monster in, which I thought would be a nice fun twist, as well as the fact we're only playing with 4 characters or 4 heroes going into this, or I guess in this particular situation they're called investigators. I may use all of those interchangeably throughout the playthrough, but I'm really excited for this, so let's get into those quick corrections. We'll get into the win and lose conditions, and then we'll move right into the playthrough. So the very first correction that I want to make is about the spawn points. The rulebook actually states that you put a spawn token inside of each of the specified areas within the scenario book, which are clearly marked, and there's 6 of them. And so when I went ahead during the setup, I put these tokens right here, which are spawn tokens, into these appropriate spaces, but what I did incorrectly was I flipped them to their devoured side. They should have been sitting like this. This is a spawn token, this is a devoured token, so they should have been sitting, all 6 of them, like this in these locations. On top of that, what I'm going to do to make this even easier to see is I'm going to use these 3D tokens, which are these guys right here, in order to show that there's a spawn point there. So instead I'm going to take this one away, we're going to add it back to the token pool, I'm going to be reshuffling those and putting the Devourer tokens back out because they actually are put onto the board for this scenario a little differently. So again, we got to go through all the Devoured rooms that have one of these tokens, and we're going to change them all over to 3D spawn markers, and then based on the special rules of the scenario, we're going to put a Devoured token, which will be one of these revealed side up tokens, in every other space except for the ones that have spawn tokens in them. So for instance, this major square right here would have no Devoured token sitting in the middle, but would have one in every single space around it, which is nasty. So I'm going to go ahead and get that all corrected. So now with the Kickstarter 3D spawn tokens in place, which makes it a lot easier to actually see where those monsters are coming in, we're now going to go ahead for the special rules section of the scenario and now put a Devoured token in every other space in a Devoured tile, except for ones that have spawn tokens already. So in this case, we're going to go ahead and we're going to grab this one here, we're going to flip it over to its Devoured side, and we're going to place it in a, and we're just going to basically go around through all the Devoured tiles everywhere there isn't a spawn. So I'm just going to do this fairly quickly so I can show you guys exactly how it works, but essentially you're just dropping them all in. Of course, you don't put one in the middle here. So there's one over here, there wouldn't be one in this tile, and then you come over here, do the same. So there's 3 up here actually, as it's a 4-space tile. So that's pretty nasty. So there we go, we finished the whole left-hand side of the board. There's a whole bunch of nasty Devoured effects that are all over the place, which is going to kind of hinder us as we go along. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to go to the right-hand side of the board. I'm going to do the exact same thing. There you go. As you can see now, we have the spawn tokens all set up for the right-hand side as well. So 3 of them. In every other area, we have the Devoured tokens. So 1 there, 1 here, and 1 up here. This next suggestion from Mythos Storm was actually a really good one because there's already a divide to show in the scenario book that there's a difference between the left-hand side and the right-hand side, and there's obviously going to be some traveling back and forth, things like that. With this right-hand side, though, the closer you look at it, even though the scenario has all of this clumped together in a pile, really, when you enter into one of these particular areas, whether it be from this spot here with the green, this spot for an entrance marker up here with the yellow, or this spot down here off screen for the orange, you're really only moving between 2 tiles at any given time. So basically you're coming in on this one in the orange, and you're coming into here and hitting this energy token pile. Same thing for the green coming through these doors going here, and yellow coming through and going to these doors here. So these ones are not connected in any way, so even though they're bunched up, it gives the appearance in the scenario book that they're actually kind of one unit. So to make that a little more obvious that they're actually kind of sectioned off into different areas, I've just created a little bit of space between them, and that way it just gives that appearance that you know, we're moving to different parts of this particular facility, which I think is kind of cool. So the other thing I want to mention too is you'll notice here on the Devourer track that we used to have those circular tokens on here, the 3D plastic ones. Well, there was even better ones that were given with the Kickstarter. So I'm going to be using these tokens instead. So one of them is an activation token and the other is going to be a Devourer token. So we're going to have the activation token starting with Samuel Smith when he begins, and it'll be basically just placed on his activation card. And then of course the actual Devourer token will just be sitting like this, and we'll be moving along the track, and it's a lot easier for you guys to see this. Now the reason I didn't put that in the solo setup is because these are Kickstarter things that are just kind of over and above. You don't need 3D tokens, you don't need these tokens to play the game, but they just kind of enhance it, and they also make it easier for you guys, the viewer, to see what's actually going on the game board, so I find that useful. So due to an absolutely overwhelming response in the comments on the setup video, guys, we're going to be using the more prepared team variant, which has these cards coming into play. So there's like healing syringes, we've got ourselves a simulative syringe, and a mutation syringe. They all have different things, a sedative syringe and a dormancy syringe. So a whole bunch, and they have all these different effects. So we'll actually see them in action when we get through the playthrough. But what I wanted to do with this is I wanted to go ahead and actually shuffle these up, and one of these will be drawn and given to each of our characters. And we're going to do it on camera so you guys can see it happen. So I'm just shuffling off camera right now, and then the other two that I don't use are going to be discarded, because of course we're only playing with 4 characters. If we were playing with 6, then all of them would be used and you wouldn't be discarding any. So here we go, and because this isn't really part of the normal setup, this is kind of like a more advanced variant, or actually more of a aid variant is really a better way to say it. Here we go. So here's 6 cards. We're going to take the first one here for Samuel Smith. So Samuel Smith's going to go into it with a it looks like a mutation syringe, and there's the effect there on the bottom, so you can read that if you'd like. So we'll put that to the side. The next one is going to be Jared. So Jared's going to be going in with a healing syringe. That's not bad. So we'll put that with him. Felicia is going to be going in with a sedative syringe. Okay, we're getting a good assortment of different syringes here, so that's good. And another healing syringe. Well, that'll come in handy. So having healing syringes, and that's for Arthur, our last character. So the last 2 that we didn't pick, or didn't get, I should say, these 2 are going to be discarded back to the game box. We won't be seeing those anymore. We're going to begin with reading the flavor text to the scenario so we can all get a decent idea as to why we're here in the first place, as well as the win and lose conditions, and what we need to do as investigators when we get into this deep sea mining facility in order to win. And then we're going to bring our investigators onto the board and begin round number 1. Are you guys ready? I don't know if I am, but I sure hope you are. Let's get into it. Chapter 2, The Last Shuttle to Hell. The hatch opens with a guttural groan as you hold your breath, your haphazard weapon trained on the shadowy space unveiling before you. There's nothing out there. At least, nothing you can see. I think I heard movement behind us, says Dr. Armitage. He murmurs, glancing nervously back down the flickered corridor. Then let's not give them a chance to catch up, Samuel says. Stepping through the hatch, Drake joins him, scanning the corners for signs of life. Seems clear, Drake says. The whole team advances into the room, and Arthur cycles the hatch behind you. There's no doubt that this is the shuttle terminal. Sallow light flickers down from the emergency fixtures overhead, casting inconstant shadows that grow and recede between the rows of empty chairs crowding the room. The opposing wall is slightly rounded and lined with sealed hatches. Above the hatches, the words Dunwich Station are bolted to the metal. Randy advances toward one of the commuter hatches and shines her flashlight through the door's porthole. There's no shuttle here, guys, she says. Spotting a booth nearby, she strides over to it and climbs inside. 30 seconds later, the room growls to life. Additional lights flicker on, washing the bay in welcome splashes of illumination as screens snap and stutter with images of facility maps and company propaganda. Attention passengers, a woman's voice chirps from speakers spaced around the room. All shuttles are currently experiencing technical difficulties. Expect departure times to be significantly delayed. We apologize for any inconvenience this may cause. Oh, that certainly sounds promising, Doctor. So where exactly is our shuttle, Miss Carter? Randy trails off. Arthur shoves his way into the booth beside her. It's coming, he says, but it's coming very, very slowly. Why, says Samuel. What's the malfunction? Arthur's fingers dance over the screens. The shuttle looks like it's propelled by several accelerator units inside its tube, and those accelerators are all currently offline. It's running entirely on its own power right now, and that seems to be pretty laughable. Can we fix it? You ask. Arthur's fingers glide over the displays again, and he curses. Yeah, we can. The malfunctioning accelerator units are set up in several rooms underlying this one. We need to reboot them using an override control code, which I will get us right now. Here it is. What's the catch? Drake asks. The acceleration initially shut down because their rooms are flooded, Arthur replies. Holy hell, Dr. Asimov says. What else, Arthur? Samuel asks. Once we get the accelerators online, we're going to have to lag it back here because the shuttle is not going to wait for us. If we miss it, we're screwed. I doubt those units will survive a second trip. Why can't we just wait for it? Dr. Armitage says. It might be slow, but I, for one, don't relish the idea of drowning in freezing cold salt water. Something screeches from the hall you just exited. Another something groans. We're all going, Samuel says, before our company arrives. Let's move. Claws squeal down the far side of the metal hatch. I said move, Samuel hisses. The only way out of here is on that shuttle, but at this rate, there's not a chance it'll reach you and your team before those horrors that are squirming down the corridor behind you. There are accelerators deep in the facility that need to be restarted to get the shuttle back up to speed. And when your team has activated each one enough times to accumulate the necessary energy, the shuttle will pick up speed and arrive at the shuttle terminal. However, the order the accelerators are activated in will also determine which direction the shuttle will come from, and consequently, where you will have to catch it before it's gone. You've only got one shot at this. Will you make it before the shuttle leaves, taking your last chance of survival with it? One of the biggest things to understand, guys, with this particular scenario is that any of these entrance markers that are coded with a particular color, like this one here, is going to move you to the same door, which is considered adjacent, but there's no line of sight through it, on the right-hand side of the board, which is out of frame right now. So remember those three separate rooms that were red, yellow, and green? This entrance will take you to the red entrance. We find the green, it takes you to the green, yellow to the yellow. So that's how we're going to be able to get the different energy stacks that are inside of each of those particular rooms under this particular level we're in here. So in terms of layers, the rooms we're going into through these entrance markers are technically underneath of us. We have energy stacks inside of each of those rooms that are about this deep. So they start with 3, 2, 1. We saw this in the solo setup. Basically, as long as you go ahead and use an investigative action to pick up a code token from the middle of this room, you can use that investigator to go after one of these energy tokens. The only kind of caveat to the whole thing is going to be that you can only have one code token in per round. The code token will regenerate every single round, and a new one will show up here, and then another investigator can grab it. But there's that. So there's this whole management of keeping this side of the board clean of monsters, also picking up code tokens as they respawn, and you're taking one every single round, trying to get to those energy stacks to accumulate a total of 12 energy. When you get to those energy stacks and you successfully do an investigative action there, you discard your code token that you've got currently on your player, and your player can only ever have one in hand, and then you gain whatever's on the top of the energy stack. So in this case, I'd gain a 3. I'd then take that 3 token and I would place it on top of the tram, because it's basically like I'm trying to power this tram up or this shuttle up so that it'll arrive. The really interesting mechanic with this one is that once that tram has a total of 12 power, we take a look at every single energy token that's been put on that tram to get it to 12. We find out whichever one has the most of a particular color, and then that is the shuttle docking station where that shuttle is going to arrive at. So again, it's considered a terminal marker, and there's a few of them on this side of the board here with our heroes. So I'm going to zoom back out so you can see those again, but that's where the tile number 30 can potentially show up. So there's a lot going on in this. It'll be a lot of controlling the left-hand side of the board of monsters to keep it clear enough that we can get to a shuttle when it shows up. There's a fun part where we can actually play a little bit of cat and mouse with the monsters, trying to figure out where the best shuttle should arrive to help our heroes get onto it. But the downside is we have no idea where those monsters are going to spawn and what trouble we're going to run into in those rooms down below as we try to get the energy to power the shuttle in the first place. So there should be a lot of stuff going on in this one. It'll be really fun. So this should bring back memories of the solo setup for you guys. These right here are the terminal markers. I'm going to probably be referring them to the shuttle docking bay or shuttle stations and all that kind of stuff throughout the gameplay, because really at the end of the day, this tile tile number 30 is going to arrive, and it's going to connect basically to whichever terminal we have the most energy from once we get all the energy up to 12. And at that point in time, we've got enough power for the shuttle to show up and get us out of here. If we do not make it with at least 3 of our 4 investigators, we lose the game. So that's right, we could lose one. We can actually sacrifice one of our guys as we try to get out of there, but if we lose more than one, we're not going to be able to successfully achieve victory. So that's kind of sad. That's kind of what we have to play with. Also, of course, if the Devourer track here goes from the very beginning to the very, very end, we consider timed out. We've run out of time. We're just completely devoured by the amount of monsters on the board. So there's a time element, and there's also this whole idea of trying to, a scenario-specific element in terms of getting this shuttle to the right station that works the best for us, and that's where the strategy is going to come in. Is it green? Is it red? Is it yellow? We can kind of hopefully play around with that based on where the monsters show up. If the epic monster happens to show up in a particular room, it's probably going to cut off that particular color for us. Might cause us a lot of grief. So it's going to be it's going to be really fun actually to try to figure out and kind of play cat and mouse with the monsters as to how we can get around them, to get enough energy to get this shuttle to get us the heck out of this facility, or at least moving along. So guys, that's it. We have now covered the quick couple things I wanted to correct from the solo setup, and most of it wasn't really corrections, or more so just tweaks. One was just a variant that we're adding in, which is really cool, so now we have a little bit of a bump up. There is one final thing to do, and then we're literally moving into the playthrough, and that is going to be a very cool mechanism with when you're controlling, especially solo, with 4 investigators. So the final thing we do before we start our brand new game round of Deep Madness is get our extra activation tokens out of the box. Because we are currently using 4 investigators only, we can see here we have 2 blank spots. If we were playing the game with 6 characters, you would not use these extra activation tokens. If you're playing with 5, of course, you'd have 1 blank. And if you have 4, like I do, you have 2 blanks. The point of that is every character always has 3 actions going through a particular game round. So that totals up to a loss of 6 actions when not playing with 6 total investigators. So what they do to balance that out is you have these tokens here, and when you're playing with 4 characters, you're going to want to find the ones that say 2-1, 2-1, because that's a total of 6, which is essentially 6 actions. And those 6 actions are going to be divvied out across your characters. But the fun part is you don't get to pick. They're shuffled up, and you don't know what they're going to be, and then they're literally placed on every character at the beginning of every round, and they will change every round. So it's gonna, sometimes it might help you, and sometimes it might hurt you, depending on who you really need that extra action on. So at the end of the day, everyone's gonna get at least 1 extra activation, so that's good, and some are gonna get an additional one on top of that to a total of 5, so that's pretty crazy. So the first one off the top here is gonna be a 2 for Samuel. So we'll throw 2 right there. The next one is a 1, and of course you do these face down, I'm just doing them off camera. And a 1 for Jared, and lastly we have Arthur with 2. And again, remember, these will change. So throughout the gameplay, every single round, all that stuff will be refreshed. That is it, guys. We are ready to do this. Let's move into the playthrough. So we're going to take a look at this reference card here, which has all 4 of the major events or phases which will happen within each game round. So you can see here every game round has a Devour phase, a Spawn phase, an Activation phase, and a Refresh phase. And it's very, very handy because it also lists the investigator actions and the investigator attacks. So we're starting off in the Devourer phase, which is the very first phase. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to move the track up 1 space. So the Devourer marker is going to move to here, and it sits on top of a Devourer icon, this one right here. And what that means is we're going to go to the room deck, reveal a card, find out which tile within this game is going to become devoured. And on top of that, that room deck card that we pull up will then be placed in the devoured pile, which will later be pulled for spawn. So the room deck is this deck right here, face down, and the devoured deck is this one right beside it. So we're going to now reveal the very first card off the top of this deck, and we got 10. So 10 is going to be the room which is devoured. So let's go ahead, find where 10 is, and then actually fulfill all of the devoured effects on that tile by flipping it over. So this is quite unfortunate because this one's actually connected to our yellow entrance marker, which this tile, number 10, is now devoured. So we're going to take all of the markers off of it for now, and we're going to flip it over to its devoured state and make sure that the doors still align as they did before. So it will look like this. Next up, we're going to go ahead and we're going to place the entrance marker back where it was, as well as the flood tokens where they were. And at this point now, we must go ahead and place a spawn marker of our choosing in this room. So what's really nasty is there already is one right here. We could technically put it here so that we're able to get into this room. Remember, moving through an entrance is we can't actually do line of sight. So I couldn't be at the other yellow entrance marker and make shots into here, because that would have been a cool strategy to put it here and then be able to take shots at the doorway. So we might as well do it as far away from us as possible. I think that might be a good idea. Who knows? That's kind of the fun part with this. You could go either way, but it is the player's choice, so I'm choosing to put it at that particular spot. And now that number 10 room card is going to go to the top of the Devourer deck, face up, and it's going to be one of the very first places that we end up spawning monsters. And this deck basically continues to go in order, and the order stays as is, unless and when more room cards become Devourer cards, but that Devourer deck will constantly stay kind of listed as things are entered into it. In other words, the order shouldn't change except for just new cards being added to the top of the deck when things get devoured, or if there's any special game effects that change that. Next, we go ahead and we actually take one of these devoured tokens, we don't know what they are, we reveal it, and place it in one of the areas within that devoured tile that does not contain a spawn token, so it's going to be on the very, very entrance to the yellow area. Next up is the spawn phase, which we're going to move into right now, and it's all determined based on the Devourer track and the number in the top left-hand corner of the particular tile that you're on. So in this case, it's 3, meaning we're going to be pulling 3 spawn cards from the spawn deck and then resolving them in order. So let's go ahead to the spawn deck, pull our first one, find out what we have. So what we're going to be doing in order to resolve this is we're going to go ahead and we're going to be pulling based on the number which is on the Devourer track, which we determined was 3. So we're going to go ahead and grab a card off the top here to start the spawning off. The very first one we get is Twisted. So this Twisted card will be spawned. You can see the icon down here only shows one singular icon with a number 1 inside of it. There can be times where there's 2 icons. That would mean that 2 different rooms would get that number of monsters, Twisted in this case. But we only have 1, so that means that room number 10 is going to get 1 Twisted inside of it. Then we just discard the Twisted card to the side, and we're going to go ahead here and also take the 10 and put it to the bottom of the Devourer deck once the Twisted's on the board. So let's go ahead, spawn the Twisted where the spawn marker is, put that card on the very bottom. So we have a Twisted showing up right here next to the spawn marker. That's pretty nasty. So this guy's going to be waiting for us way up near the yellow entrance marker. So now we've resolved that. We're going to take that number 10 Devourer card or room card and put it at the very bottom of the Devourer deck. And again, that Devourer deck is going to constantly be cycling through. The only times that order is going to change is when newly devoured rooms are put on top. Okay, so we're going for our second spawn card now, because remember we got to do 3 of these things, and we got Ravenous. Oh no, we got one that has a double room icon there, so 2 rooms are going to be getting it. The first room's going to get 2, and the second room will get 1. So the very first room we're going to have Ravenous show up in is going to be room 21, and we actually knew that one because at the very beginning of the Devourer phase, the 10 went on top. We already knew the 21 was there. What we don't know is what's coming after this, so that'll be fun. So let's go ahead and get our Ravenous set up and put into room 21. Well, this is kind of fun. We're going to have some Ravenous here show up right behind us in the spawn point on 21. So 2 of these guys are in this corridor now. That is not good. They'll be heading our way very, very soon. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and take 21 from the Devourer deck, put that down at the very bottom of the deck. The next room to get hit is going to be 2. Well, this is super unfortunate because room number 2 is exactly where my guys are currently, as you can see right there. So room number 2, that is not good. And guess where the spawn marker is? Literally in the exact same space as all of my heroes. So we're going to have a Ravenous show up right in the middle of us out of nowhere that we're going to have to deal with at the beginning of our activations. Okay, so the Ravenous card has been discarded up here. We also have already wrapped around the room number 2 to the bottom of the Devourer deck. We're ready to pull our next spawn card and find out what happens. Hopefully it's not another double room. That would be bad. We got a Putrid, and it's only 1, so 1 Putrid in 1 room. Thank goodness. I was really hoping that that would happen, so that's good. because another double room is just, it's nasty. So we're going to have actually one putrid show up in room number 6. We'll cycle that to the bottom of the Devourer deck. So tile number 6 is actually close to the red energy. So it's going to be showing up right here. So the putrid's going to be right there. So downstairs in one of the lower level rooms that we need to get down to for energy, we have now successfully done all 3 of the spawns for this particular round. All right, this is it. We get to finally move into the activation phase. So as you can see, the game will pick up quickly. I will also do less of the teaching as I go through. The very first round, there's going to be a lot of me showing you every single bit of movement as I go through here and cycling the cards and all that. Once we get into the second round, I'm going to start cutting some of that stuff out so that we can actually get focused more on the gameplay and moving it along quicker. I always like that first round to be a nice training kind of teaching of the rules so that you get a good idea of the flow. And then, of course, as we find and run into the odd rule here and there, situational stuff, I will speak to that. So we're going to start the activation phase right now. We're starting it off with Samuel Smith here, who's going to go before Substance goes. If you're not familiar how activations work, they basically use this token and it goes like this. It moves in a kind of a diagonal and down type situation. So you'll start with Samuel Smith, then you move to this, you move to Substance, then you move back up here, then you move to Twisted, and so forth and so on until you're all the way to the end. If there are no monsters of the specified type, of course you just skip it, and of course if you get blanks, you skip it. But if it lands on anything that actually exists on the game board currently, whether it's a investigator or a monster, it must be activated, and you can go ahead and do your actions, or you follow the specified actions on the AI cards. So without further ado, how about we get Samuel Smith moving along? He's probably going to want to help out with that Ravenous that is sitting in his spot. So let's see what we can do about that. So we're starting off the activation with Samuel Smith, who literally hears a gigantic monster drop down behind him, swivels around on a dime, and he is the yellow player, sees the ravenous creature looking straight at him, and knows he needs to deal with him, and he has such quick reflexes as one of the strongest and most powerful characters in this particular group. He knows on his activation he's going to need to deal with this thing, but we also have alternatives. So first off, when a monster's in your space, it has a trap value, and those trap values can be found on the bottom left-hand corner of the cards. You can see there's a 1. It's very, very low for the Ravenous right now. There's only 1 of them in there. Now, they all combine. So for instance, if these Ravenous up here happen to be in there, the trap value would be 3, and we're talking about the same area, not per tile. So it's interesting because every single investigator down there has an ability to escape monsters up to a certain trap value, but after that they get stuck and they have to deal with whatever's in there. And of course, the nastier the monster, the higher those trap values becomes. Ravenous is a 1. Every other monster I currently have is either a 2 or a 3. So you can see how that can really, really be a problem if a few of them get in there with you. Samuel Smith, however, has a escape value of 4, so he can handle a whole bunch of these guys in one spot. He has no problem handling the 1 Ravenous that's in there. And he also has some special abilities on his card, as well as on the back, seeing as we're activating him, a full story. So I'm going to go ahead and we're going to read a little bit about Samuel Smith so we can actually understand who this character is and what they're all about. There's a big heart powering Samuel Smith's considerable brawn. That's why he was undone when the submarine he was captaining had a terrible accident, resulting in the death of everyone aboard except himself. Taking a leave of absence, Samuel turned to alcohol to fill the empty void in his chest. They called it survivor's guilt. He called it his personal purgatory. Why him? Why had he survived? Why couldn't he save them? When the alcohol failed to do much more than give him splitting headaches, Samuel embraced something he hadn't thought of since his childhood, his faith. It was there that he finally found the healing he desperately sought. His friends noticed the change in him, and it wasn't long before they were calling him Preacher, both as a gentle barb and as a marker of the man he'd become. It was some time later that Samuel was approached by a representative from the Lang Corporation. They told him something had happened at the Kadath facility, and they needed him to lead a team down there to investigate. All at once, Samuel felt every muscle in his body tighten into knots. They wanted him to lead, but how could he ever do that again? At the same time, he knew he had to take action. If there were any innocent lives trapped down there, he couldn't leave them to whatever fate lay in store. In the end, he said yes. He desperately hoped he wouldn't come to regret that decision. So Samuel has a couple really cool abilities on his card. One here is called Confronting the Darkness. Once per activation, you may move a non-epic monster on the board one space towards you. So he basically can bait monsters to him, likely yelling at them, trying to get them to come closer. So he could basically call out to these monsters, bring them one closer, that type of thing. So it can be really handy strategically if you're trying to potentially draw them to one area of the map to maybe leave some space for another investigator to get free. Now, down below that, it says no one left behind. He's also a preacher, so based on the story we just read, he cares about people, and he can move as an action, and when he does so, he can exhaust one sanity to ignore the monster's trap and or choose an investigator in his space to move with you. So he's basically lugging around another investigator with him, refusing to let them have or fall into any bad situation. So he's a very useful character. One very important thing to note with Deep Madness that makes it very unique than a lot of other miniature games, where when monsters come into a space with investigators or your heroes, essentially in most other games, typically there's a negative effect in terms of the actions that can be taken by those investigators. Sometimes they're limited by what they can do when they have a monster in their space, but not in Deep Madness. There's none of that. You don't have to worry about managing, oh, can I do this action if the monsters are in there? The only thing you have to worry about is the trap. So if the trap value is higher than your escape value on the investigator you're trying to activate, you can't move out until you kill monsters down to that limit so that it's underneath of your escape value, then you're good. But going forward with this particular situation, I could just leave the Ravenous alone, but I'm probably going to take it out because I'd rather it just not activate, even though it activates way late in the activation order. It's actually second last in the monster row. So what we're going to do actually is I'm going to do a search action first. Next, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to pick up the code token because I think Samuel will be a great character to be carrying a code token to start. He's got a lot of health. He's likely to make it to try to get 3 energy, which is on the top of every single energy pile. So he's probably the best guy to have it at the start. We'll see how that goes. And again, I can trade it around if I want to. And then at the next round coming, a new code token will show up and someone else can grab it and go on their way. So let's go ahead right now, and we're going to actually move the Ravenous to the side, and I'm going to go ahead and use one of my 5 actions, because there's another reason I'm doing this with Samuel, because he has so many actions. I'm going to take that code token, so now he's got that in his possession, so that takes away one of his actions. Second action is going to be to search, so I'm going to go to the search deck, which I placed far off to the right, pulling a card, and I got myself the Sedative Mask. So that's pretty cool. Sedative Mask, my goodness. Your 4 is treated as, oh wow, your 4 is treated as success result. Roll a die at the end of the round. If you roll a non-success result, discard this card. Oh wow, that's a super powerful card. I wish I had gotten that way later in the game. So I could end up losing this. So it's basically one of those things, it's kind of like, it kind of reminds me a little bit of like a blessing condition in Eldritch Horror, where it's like, excellent, I've got better shot at doing things, but I could potentially lose this. So let's see here. What do we want to do? I currently have spent 2 actions, one for the code, one to search. We probably should make an attack action. I was hoping to get a better gun. That was the reason I was searching in the first place, even though I didn't make that clear. I do have an SMG on him, so I'm not too concerned. You can see that in the very bottom, my attack here says that you may exhaust 1 sanity to roll 2 additional dice. You may use this effect multiple times. So I can burn out sanity on Samuel in order to reroll dice. Now, there's a mechanic within this game that's very, very interesting. They have it so that essentially if you don't spend any sanity at all, so as of right now, Samuel has 3, and you can spend sanity to do re-rolls and things like that. But if you don't spend any sanity and you have none on your card, I shouldn't say if you don't spend, if you don't have any on your card when you kill a monster, you will gain what is called, if you kill it, a consciousness card. And that can have really nice effects. It's almost kind of like a bonus for not using the re-rolls to do the job. If you use the re-rolls to do the job, you can spend up to the total limit of your sanity, and at the very end of your turn, or even during your turn, you can rest and wipe that whole sanity clean. So that is kind of like your currency in this game, is how much madness, how much potential madness do you want to put on yourself. Another thing that's nasty too is that if you do have sanity, there is a mechanism within the game that if it's on your card when you kill a monster, and things like that, it can potentially turn into madness, which is a whole other ball of wax that we'll talk about when we get a little further in, but it's bad. So you got to be careful with your usage of sanity. You got to use it when it makes sense to use it and not use it at other times. So first off, we got 3 more actions for Samuel, so we might as well go ahead and take a shot using the SMG at this Ravenous. So this SMG here, it can shoot at a range of 2. So currently where I'm sitting on the board here, I could shoot 2 away. So I'm in this space, I could shoot to here. I could shoot actually all the way into here, no problem. But there's no monsters here because this is actually, I can walk in a straight line and make that work. Anytime there's a bend in a corner, I can't do it. So I obviously can't shoot over here because my range would have to be 3 anyway to make it there. But you could never shoot, around corners and things like that. Of course, if a hatch is locked or closed, you can't shoot. We also have to take into consideration any of these tokens, but right now we're in the middle. So these tokens only affect the outer areas, so we can ignore them for this attack. Basically, I'm going to use my 3rd action here, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to be rolling 5 dice, is what it shows here on the very bottom of the card, which is actually quite nice. I'm looking for 5s as successes, and I do 1 damage for every hit. The cool thing is when you're using a melee weapon, this one is considered a ranged, of course. Range, you have to choose 1 individual to shoot. If you're going to use a melee weapon, then if you get a certain number of damage, you can actually allocate the melee damage however you want across a number of different enemies. If it's ranged, you can only focus all that damage on 1 unit. So that's very, very important to note as well when attacking. Okay, so the very first attack here is going to be using a SMG against the Ravenous. And again, I'm going to get 5 dice. I'm looking for 5s on these for actual hits. So we're going to take 5 of these dice. We're, of course, looking for a total damage of 2. So 2 is the top right-hand icon right here. You'll see there's a smaller number, 0 right there. That's basically like their armor resistance. So some monsters that are tougher you have to get through the armor as well in order to make hits against them. So I just need 2. There's no resistance against Ravenous. It's going to go straight through. So hopefully I can get at least 2, and I don't need to use any sanity for rerolls or anything like that. The good thing is I do have that new mask that I got, so my 4s are treated as successes as well, giving me an even better chance at doing this. So here we go. Let's see what we get. Well, thank goodness for those 4s, because that makes it a perfect kill. It's actually more than we needed, so that's fantastic. And here's where things get cool. So we actually took out the Ravenous, so obviously the card still stays in play, the larger card. The Ravenous itself is removed from the game board, so a successful 3rd action kill. The great news is I have no sanity. So how this works normally is if I had used any sanity, which looks like this, and it had been sitting on my player board, my player's character sheet, you take a look at the monster that you just killed, and you look in the top left-hand corner, and that's considered its horror rating. It's basically like saying this monster is terrifying, and even though you killed it, you're still, like, the horror of it has still messed with your mind, and if you're already going a little insane, that sanity, one of your sanity tokens will then flip to a madness token where you're going even more crazy. And if you get up to 3 madness tokens, you have to exchange them in, and you get a madness card, which is really bad and usually has an effect that's going to hurt you. So this is where using the sanity is not just willy-nilly. You do have to plan out how you're going to go ahead and use it. It's a really interesting mechanic. It's kind of a risk-reward type situation. So we don't have to, the cool thing is we have no sanity usage on Samuel yet, so because of that, as a reward, the game basically gives you these consciousness cards, which is usually a good benefit as well as some nice flavor text. So what do we get as our first consciousness card? Williams Revelations number 4. I seem to have found a path to gain mastery over the sphere. It will require culling the conscious essence from many of the remaining sheep in Kadath, but they will give it up to the sphere soon enough if they don't give it to me first. I am, in no uncertain terms, humanity's last hope. Only I can harness the sphere, stave off its spread across the world, and bring the church's long sought after enlightenment to mankind. Really, they should thank me for taking what I need. So again, the major thing that you get, you don't have to read all this text every time, but it's kind of cool to do that. It's nice that they included that much flavor text, but it says at the very bottom here, you may choose and discard a devoured effect from the board. Ooh, this is cool. So I basically at this point in time can choose a devoured effect, which is one of these revealed ones, and just get rid of it, which is really good because I could actually choose something that's potentially around us, because we're going to be moving out very soon and don't want to have to be, hurt by these things. So what might be worth our while is to take a closer look at the devoured effect tokens to find out what they mean. All right, so these ones might be tough to see, and that's okay. I'm going to go ahead and actually bring these up closer. I'll bring examples as we go through them. So these are the devoured effects in the game. The very first one here is a -1. It's very hard to see on camera, but it says right here, you gain escape -1 while you're in this space. So if we ever see -1, and actually there is one of them in the room that we're currently in, it looks like this, then we basically simply just lose 1 off of our escape. So if we're in that area, that effect takes place. So that's something that we might want to think about depending. The next one down here shows a -1 when gaining resistance while you're in this space. So it says you gain resistance -1 while you're in this space. So if you have any resistance on you, you're going to lose 1 of it. And that one looks like the negative cube. Kind of looks like a negative die, basically. So it looks like this. If you see those, you're losing a resistance. The next one says at the end of your activation, deal 1 damage to yourself. This one is straightforward. It's just as soon as your turn is done. If you happen to be in that room and you see this one right here, it's just a straight damage you're going to take. The other one here is at the end of your activation, you exhaust a sanity. So it's forcing you to become a little bit closer to being crazy and getting madness conditions. So it looks like a sanity token, of course. After that, you've got at the end of your activation, you take 1 madness. That's a terrible one. I actually don't think I have that. Oh, I do have one of those on the board. It's way up in the top right, but it looks like this. It looks exactly like the backs of the madness cards. So it has a face on it of a guy going absolutely nuts. So you don't want to see those. That's really bad. Madness cards are nasty. Over here, we have at the end of your activation, you are slowed. Let's see if I have one of those on the board. Let's see. I actually may not have one of those right now. So that one, just to describe it to you, kind of looks like, well, actually, it's really tough to describe. Let me see if I can find one for you guys, because this will make it a lot easier. Here we go. I think I got one right here. So this is the slowed token. Looks like that. Okay. The next one is at the end of your activation, you are weakened. So that one I may actually have one on the board here somewhere. Or maybe not. Maybe I don't have that one either. Where is one of those? Let's see. Here we go. Looks like this. I don't even know what that is. It's very interesting looking. All right. And then the next one is a -1. It's blue, and it says at the end of your activation, you discard 1 of your search cards. That's really bad. So it is, for instance, with Samuel, I may end up losing this even before rolling and failing at the check at the end of a round. And the other one is another, it's actually just a 1. There's no negative, and it says at the end of your activation, spawn a monster with a horror of at least 1 in your space. That's bad. So again, if you happen to have a monster with a horror 1, that's probably what you're going to want to bring in. I doubt you're going to want to spawn something in that's bigger than a 1, but it says that you have to, so that's pretty nasty. So those are a rough overview of the different devoured effects. So now when you see them on the game board as we go through, it should make a little bit more sense. Now we need to decide which one we want to remove now that we know what these devoured effects are. So the devoured effects that are directly around us right now, which is what we'll focus on for the one removal, I think it makes the most sense. We should probably remove one that we're going to end up moving into anyway, because it just makes strategic sense off the bat. Of course, later on, we can actually choose other tiles, for instance, that actually have monsters in them, or maybe even where the energy is and stuff like that, if we ever get lucky enough to get another one. But I think off the bat, because all 4 characters will likely stick together for the most part, except, well, that's not true. There's probably going to be quite a bit of divide going into this. But let's go through all the ones we have here. So first off is the sanity one. So basically you're going to take a sanity token at the end of your turn, something you can't shy away from. You're just going to have to take it. That's actually not that bad, because you can just rest that away. So it's one of the less worse ones. But again, remember, it can turn to madness. So there's got that downside. This one is a -1 search card, so again, it's going to literally make you discard one of the cards you have. For instance, like this mask, if Samuel happens to land in that spot, which would not be good. This one over here would just have you take a damage, so that's pretty straightforward. And then the one way over here is losing a little bit of resistance, so you lose 1 resistance. So it really hinges on where we plan on going. So currently, the easiest area for our investigators to head into would be the green area. We could entrance in here from our other side of the board, come in, run along here, jump through. There's no monsters at all, and grab that green one. So that would be the best course of action. So what we want to do is try to figure out which token is closest to us heading in that direction. Instead of bothering to take one away from an area we're going to probably run out of fairly quickly and likely spread out, I'm going to actually have one removed from an area with a lot of energy, because we're actually going to head to an area to pick up stuff from a particular tile and likely be under pressure. So I think it would be good to maybe remove it from the easier area right now. This one here would actually give us a weakened condition if we were in this room we stopped, which could potentially happen. And if it does, it actually kills one of our attack actions. So we would do an attack action just to discard the weakened token, which would be this token right here that we would gain, and we just burn it. So it's just a burnt action, but that's no good if we get into a tight situation with monsters with one character. That could be a very detrimental thing to have happen. So it's tough to know which one to take out this early in the game, but I'm going to go for this one right now. And that's going to resolve this particular card. The consciousness card can be discarded now. We're going to now go back to Samuel, where he has 2 more actions to spend, hopefully getting closer and closer to some energy. Now on the next turn, when the Ravenous will activate, and again when I say next turn I mean way late in the activation, they're going to move, and attack. So the Ravenous can get as close as here. So I don't want to have my character stopping here because, well, they're going to be able to just flat out attack me if I happen to be in that space, so that's no good. So I'm going to probably have him just hightail it out of there and leave the other guys to deal with those 2 Ravenous when they come in, and have him head towards the green entrance marker to get out of there and get some energy. So he's got the token, he's going to turn around, and he's going to move 1 into this area right here, and then he's going to move again into this area over here as he heads towards the green energy. So he's going downstairs to hopefully grab number 3, and we can put a 3 token on the shuttle, which needs to be powered up. All right, time to move the activation marker. So we're going to move this to Substance. We don't have Substance, the epic monster, on the game board, thank goodness. We're going to move up to the blank card here, nothing to go there. Move down to Twisted. We do have Twisted on the board, and what are they going to do? Well, a Twisted, which currently sits close to where entrance yellow is, way up in the top right-hand corner of the board, will move and then attack. And of course it has a wonderful attack here. It says it would roll one of those wonderful large dice at the end of the attack, and if the investigator lands the eye symbol, the investigator is going to resolve 1 madness card. That's terrible because the Twisted is so messed up looking probably. Otherwise the investigator takes 1 madness, so that's also bad because you're ticking your way up to 3, which is when you have to pull a card anyway. The last statement on the bottom of the card says if it's in a devoured room, that's what that icon stands for, Twisted is going to gain 1+ on its range, which makes him even more of a pain. He can attack from distance at this point, so he's much more comfortable in his own environment, which is obviously a lot more terrifying for anybody close by. So we kind of don't want to be facing him in his own room, but based on where he currently is, he's in an area that's just fully devoured until at least he comes up through the entrance into our area on the left-hand side of the board. But down in that yellow area right now, everything is devoured, so it's quite nasty. But he is going to go ahead and activate, so let's move over to him, find out where he's going to, and he won't be attacking us because he can only move 1 this turn. So there he is, the Twisted. So as I told you before, this whole area is devoured, so he gains that extra range when he's making an attack, but there's nobody for him to attack yet. He's going to be heading towards the door, making his way up into our area, which is going to be a problem. He's going to come through that area, and it's going to end up coming through on our side of the board, on the left-hand side, in the north section of the area, which is really bad because that again, I guess is good and bad. He's going to get out into the open. We might be able to kill him, and then all of a sudden yellow becomes an option to go get some energy from. But, at least he's going to get out of there eventually. So that's him. He's activated, and the next person in line is going to be Felicia. So Felicia is next, so we should probably become a little bit more familiar with her cards and what she's got. First off, she starts as, she's a doctor. First off, she starts with a scalpel card, so this card's not bad. It's a melee weapon, as you can see by the knife there where my thumb is. It says attack. After a monster is killed, you may restore 1 sanity, so that's pretty cool. She actually becomes, more sane after she kills things. She's got a range of 1 with this particular weapon she currently has. She can hit on 3s and higher. And she also does 2 damage, so it's actually not a bad weapon at all, really. Remember, melee weapons can be distributed damage to anyone in the same area that that the person's attacking. The other thing that I haven't started talking about yet is going to be this wonderful thing, which really is just containment for your oxygen. So basically you have an oxygen. We already put out all these flooded rooms everywhere. At some point in time, I will show you exactly how that works. It's not worth explaining right now. She also gained the sedative or sedative syringe. I don't know why I'm mispronouncing that so much. But basically, she can place one sanity token on this card at any time, cannot disrupt an action though, and if you do so, until your next activation, after you kill a monster, discard the sanity tokens instead of flipping them. That's cool. Discard this card when there are 3 sanity tokens on it. Nice. So that's got a pretty good use if she runs into a situation where she's dealing with too much sanity. Now her card itself actually has this text on it. So first off, one step ahead is her ability. She's got 8 health and 3 sanity. 3 sanity limit is actually the same as Samuel, but she's got less health at 8 instead of 10. Her ability at the top right says, one step ahead, once per activation, you may perform a free move. That's amazing. So first off, she can just move for free. So that's great. The other one is you'll be fine. Action. Heal 1 wound from investigator in your space. Alternatively, exhaust 1 sanity to roll a die and heal the number divided by 2 rounded up wounds from that investigator instead. So, hey, she's a doctor. She's going to do her job. She's going to keep our crew healthy. Very, very useful to have her with us. Of course, it only matters if she is close to the other investigator she is trying to heal. So that's her. We're going to go ahead now and activate her. Now, if you guys don't remember, she currently has 1 extra activation on her Devourer track, so she has a total of 4 actions to spend. Let's dive in a little bit closer where her miniature currently sits and try to figure out a strategy as to what we want to do with her. So this is where Felicia currently sits. She is right here. She is the doctor, and she's going to be in that purplish pinkish color, which is kind of hard. Maybe it's maroon. I don't really know. Not so good with the colors. At least that one anyway. It's really kind of sits in between all of those. This is Felicia, and I want to go ahead and I want to talk about her backstory really quick because we want to find out more about who she is, how did she come to be part of this crew, and what's her background story. So Felicia knows she's not an easy person to like. But in her eyes, this cold, brutal world leaves little room for wasteful softness. Felicia was 10 years old when her parents died in a fire. Shortly after, Child Services threw her into an orphanage. There, she learned to look out for herself because no one else would. As she matured, Felicia grew intensely curious about what made people tick. Applying herself wholeheartedly to studying medicine, she soon earned a residency in one of America's top teaching hospitals. Her fervor cooled, however, as her patients all blurred into one big human lump. It all became so uninteresting, so bland. Not the science itself, but rather the people she had to practice that science on. Before long, she and the hospital agreed to part ways as the complaints piled up, branding her as cold, callous, or unfeeling. Upon leaving the hospital, Felicia decided to get as far away from humanity as she could and to focus instead on marine biology. It was at this point she was discovered by several of the Land Corporation's top research associates, all of whom felt she would be an asset to the company. Dr. Armitage's early work for the corporation did indeed prove promising, but when communication was lost with the Kadath mining facility, her previous experience as a medical doctor ensured a front row seat with the first responders. She should have stayed at the hospital. So what I'd like to do with Felicia to start off, she's already got a scalpel, she's got a sedative syringe, she can use that. Those are both useful things, but I'd like to get her something else. Now, one thing I haven't mentioned earlier with Samuel was your characters or investigators can only carry a max of 4 things, and at a certain point, if you gain a 5th, you just simply discard whatever it is you don't want. So just recognize that as a limit to the amount of stuff that they can carry each. So we're going to go ahead into the search category. She's going to rummage around this area, see if she finds something useful for her first action. She found Eagle Eye. So Eagle Eye is, interesting. When you attack with, it looks like that is a gun of some type. Oh yeah, that would be a like a pistol or an SMG. You may flip this card to gain 1 range, or you may discard this card at any time to immediately restore 3 sanity. So that's pretty cool. So it's good for a number of different things there. So that will definitely hold on to that because she might get into a situation where she needs to, she isn't able to rest to get rid of her sanity and wants to use the Eagle Eye instead, or she wants to increase her range on a shot, which is not bad. Maybe she could use that on the scalpel, so that's kind of cool. Actually, sorry, she can't use it on the scalpel because it's a melee weapon. So she actually doesn't have any weapons that can use or take advantage of that. She'd need to trade that off. I could actually do that. I could trade that to somebody. And, oh, it would have been nice to give it to Samuel, but Samuel has already run away. So we could end up giving it to Jared, though, because Jared has a pistol. So maybe what I'm going to do is, because I don't really plan on having her leave and do anything dramatic, because we know these guys are going to end up coming into this area, I don't want to split her up just yet. I need to have someone who has a decent weapon with a low, with high damage and a low, and also just to be able to get in there and do some major melee attacks. I might just have her trade Eagle Eye actually to Jared. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to do a trade action and give Eagle Eye to Jared. So I'm just moving it over here off screen because Jared has a gun, so he can actually make use of that particular increased range. So that's good. So now she's done 2 actions out of her 4. What else should we do? Well, we don't need to rest. We don't need to do anything with hatches. I could potentially move to a spot in order to be somewhere different. But remember, we've got all these wonderful Devourer effects everywhere that would hit us if we happen to land in an area or stay in one of those. So I'd have to move somewhere that's a little safer. I could technically move her towards getting towards the orange entrance marker. It might be worth it. Could be a little dangerous, but it might be a good time to do it now rather than waiting for later. We know... Oh, this could be tough. This could be really tough. Yeah, let's do it. Let's risk it. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to have her move. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to have Felicia move. And we're going to move her from here. She's going to move 1 and then 2 into this area over here. And there's no devoured effect in that room, so she's good. Doesn't take any kind of hits or anything nasty. But that is going to do it for her turn. She is out of there. So again, I've now left basically Jared and I've left Arthur in there to deal with the monsters that are coming, which may or may not be a good thing. We'll see. We'll see how that pans out. But okay, so we can see that the activation marker's on Felicia. We just finished her turn. We're moving down to Hysteria. There are none in play currently. There's no character in this position. We come to Agony. There are no Agony in play. We come over here to Jared. So Jared is next to activate and we'll have 4 activations. 3 plus the 1 extra one from the token. Alright, so Jared's activation is starting right now. We should probably find out more about him and what he has on him. So first off, Jared is a soldier. Always good to have a soldier. So far we have a captain, we have a soldier, and we have a medic. So it's a pretty good lineup so far. He can handle up to 9 damage for sanity. He also has controlled burst, so when he attacks, he can roll an additional dice, or die, I should say, when you attack with a gun. That's cool. So basically, his gun is going to be a little bit more powerful than normal. And then it says suppressing fire. You may exhaust 1 sanity to attack a monster once with a gun immediately after it has attacked you. Alternatively, exhaust 2 sanity to attack it before it attacks you. Oh, that's really cool. So he might be able to take that pot shot and kind of intercept a monster that's about to do some serious damage to him. So that's really good. We'll also talk a little bit about his story. So we should probably find out where this guy came from, what he's all about. So Jared doesn't regret his childhood. It would be pointless to do so. Jared's father and brother disappeared when he was 6 years old, and he was subsequently raised solely by his mother. He was a scrawny, quiet kid, and as such, he was bullied mercilessly throughout many of his formative years. At some point, though, Jared began to adapt. He started working out, and he started calculating. It wasn't long before the bullies learned exactly who they were messing with. Jared became known as the Soldier because of his keen mind for strategy, his quiet, humorless leadership, and his ability to execute precise brutality on his enemies. No one was surprised then when he joined the army as soon as he was of age. It looked like Jared would go career, but a car bomb riddled his body with shrapnel and led to his honorable discharge. Jared forced himself to recover and secured odd jobs as a mercenary, a bodyguard, or even, once or twice, a hitman. The Lang Corporation learned about his notable skills and hired him as a senior security officer. They were impressed by his ability to keep a secret, and he advanced quickly. Then, contact was lost with the Kadath facility. Jared was assigned to accompany the team of first responders for 2 reasons. First, to protect the rest of the team. Second, to silence them in case things grew out of hand. Jared would not hesitate to carry out either duty. That's crazy. So Jared's literally like the wolf among the sheeps here, because he really is on a mission to either help everybody or ensure Wow, just second to silence them in case things grow out of hand. So basically, if things go sideways, Jared's going to kill everybody anyway. So he's on a mission, and it sounds like the Kadath facility and those guys, that corporation, well, it doesn't sound like they're really in it for the people that they've hired. So that's good to know. So basically, that is a rundown on Jared and what he's all about. He's quite, I didn't expect him to be that aggressive compared to Samuel, but he seems like a pretty cool character. So again, we've got him in the same room as Arthur. So Arthur and him are in the same room currently. We're going to probably have him search. He currently has 3 cards because don't forget, Felicia gave him the Eagle Eye card. So he has this and he can use this with his pistol. So he has the Healing Syringe, Pistol, and the Eagle Eye. So that's 3 cards. He can search to get to his maximum carry count of 4. So we're going to do that right now. We're going to grab a card off the top, see what he gets. Oh my goodness, what a perfect card to have right now. So we got the Rivet Gun. This thing is crazy, or at least it looks crazy. So this is a gun, of course, obviously. It says attack. Let me see if I can get this thing to focus for you guys. Oh wow, this thing really doesn't want to focus. There we go. Attack. After the monster takes at least 1 wound, it is slowed. That's good. So it's got a range of 3. That's crazy high. Rolls 5 dice, hits on 4s, and does 1 damage. That is a beast of a gun. This is fantastic because he has control burst, meaning he gets to roll an additional die with this. So when he shoots with the Rivet Gun, he's going to be shooting literally with 6 dice. That's craziness. So what a great, great weapon to get for Jared. That lined up perfectly. Okay, so that was his search action. Remember, Jared had 1 extra activation, so now he's down to his 3 leftover actions. So what does he want to do? He doesn't need to trade, he doesn't need to rest. Doesn't really need to lock or unlock any hatches currently. We don't have any worry there. We do have these lockable hatches here and here, which we might use at some point, but no monsters are coming from either of those spaces just yet. So we don't have to worry about that. Those are likely to come into play when we try to get Eddie here on a shuttle. We can do component actions, but not necessarily. There's nothing really there. It's probably just more movement at this point. So he has 3 actions. He can't get into a position to shoot these guys just yet that are just up in the top left-hand corner. It's not worth it for him to move close and risk having to do anything. He might just want to sit still. Because the other thing too is somebody needs to get the next code key that shows up, and he seems like a really good candidate to pick it up. He's doing quite well. Now the other thing is, guys, you might have thought, hey, you sent the doctor off to go to the other one. She doesn't even have a code key. Don't worry, I was thinking about this. I'm just getting the doctor to start moving because I plan to have Arthur go with the doctor. So Arthur's going to go with the doctor once he gets a code key. The doctor's going to kind of keep monsters at bay that come through this entrance eventually, but it's going to be a while. She'll just hang out in there because it's not devoured yet. So hopefully it stays that way. So yeah, I think I'm just going to have him sit. So essentially I'm just going to pass at this point. I'm not actually going to do anything else with his turn. It sounds like it's kind of a waste in terms of doing anything else, but I don't want to risk moving into an area where I'm going to have to take any kind of devoured effect damages and things like that. So I'm happy to leave him right where he is so he can pick up the next code key. So his turn is going to be done. Now we're moving on to the Ravenous. Yeah, we knew it was coming, so the activation marker is now on the Ravenous, so we get to choose which ones activate first and then activate them. So let's go over and find the 2 Ravenous left on the game board and follow the move action as well as any attacks they can do, plus their Devourer here. They gain some resistance if they have to be in a devoured room, something to keep note of in case they need it. All right, so the Ravenous are up here in the top corner. They can move 2 right now, and you can kind of see things are even. Where currently Samuel sits in this room, he's 3 away from them, and technically the Ravenous are 3 away from these guys in this area as well. I'm going to go ahead because I get to choose when they're equal where they go, and I'm going to have them still head towards this area because I want them to be in range so that my guys can just jump in and do something nasty. I don't mind if they land in this area because there's a sanity hit here, and sanity is not as bad, plus we don't have any yet. We should be able to rest it away if we need to. So I'm going to go ahead and have these guys move 1 and then 2 into here and then 1 into 2. So we'll have both of them come into the room. They're going to want to go ahead and do an attack. So we're going to check to see whether or not they can actually make it to us in terms of any range. So currently they do an attack, but as you can see here, they only do one attack, but they don't have any range on their card. So they're not able to do anything from distance, thank goodness. So they're not going to be able to do their attack, so that's just skipped on their activation card. So this worked out pretty good because now we can move the activation marker over to Arthur, and Arthur has 5 actions, and it's cool because now the Ravenous are actually in the same zone with us, so we can actually try to deal with them now. So this worked out pretty good. Let's see what we can get Arthur to do. All right, so Arthur is right here, and he's all ready to go. So Arthur looks like this, and he's got 8 strength and 4 sanity. He's an engineer. He can escape with 5, so that's pretty decent. He has abilities here, something useful. He can search. You may reveal 3 search cards and choose one to keep and discard the others. That's crazy. So we're definitely doing a search on his turn. Fighting dirty. We can attack, and before rolling dice, you may exhaust 1 sanity to gain. Ooh, +1 on range for guns. You can add a die. You can add the ability to... I forget what the target one is for again, what those other ones are for, so I'll have to double check those when we get into that situation, but that seems really useful. I forget those off the top of my head again. And of course one of them's wounds with knives. That's the bottom one right here, but it's the one that I can't remember is the target. Oh, maybe that's how many targets the individual can hit? I forget. Cannot combine this ability with these particular cards, so if you're wondering what that symbol's all about, let me see if I can find an example of what that is. That would be like this. Eagle Eye has that same like it's kind of a triangle basically in the card, so I can't combine it with those types of cards. And you can do it limit of once per attack. Arthur also has a full story in the back like all the other ones, so let's go ahead and find out who he is, what he's all about. Even as a boy, Arthur exhibited a great aptitude for discovering how things worked. Born into a wealthy family, he had practically limitless resources at his disposal. These passions fueled him throughout his education until he graduated from one of the nation's top colleges. Upon graduating, he announced that he would pursue his interests in the field of engineering rather than taking over his family's prominent, powerful business. His parents were far from surprised, but objected nonetheless. However, their protests quickly faded as their son's remarkable talent began to earn him fame, prestige, and wealth all of his own. Unfortunately, Arthur's drive and his occasional willingness to fight dirty finally ruined him. When news of his immoral business practice was leaked to the press, a firestorm ensued that ended with him leaving his firm, fighting multiple lawsuits, and retracting completely from the public eye. That's when the Lang Corporation offered him a position as a lead engineer in their company. Sounds like the Lang Corporation's after some pretty sketchy individuals. Arthur jumped at the chance. For one of his first projects, the executives asked him to travel to an installation that had possibly been compromised. It was a critical facility for their operations, and they needed one of their brightest minds to look it over, make sure it was still fully functional, and figure out a way to save it if it wasn't operating to plan. Arthur accepted the challenge, and shortly thereafter found himself departing, for the Kadath deep sea mining facility. So when we set Arthur up, he actually didn't come with any cards off the hop. So a lot of the other guys that I have here, and girls, we have SMGs, we got ourselves scalpels, all these different things. But we didn't get anything for Arthur except for a healing syringe, which he got as part of our more prepared team variant. So he's going to definitely need to search. The fantastic thing with that is, obviously, because he doesn't get a card off the top, his ability is so massive. He's going to use it right now. So we're going to activate him. He's got 5 activations. Let's go ahead and search and see what he gets. So he got him... Are you serious? I got another rivet gun? That's nuts. Don't worry, guys. I did shuffle that deck. I even old man shuffled that deck. And if you don't know what that means, essentially that's splitting it up into multiple piles and then later on shuffling it like normal. I made sure these were separated. That's crazy because now we have 2 of these rivet guns. That's amazing. This is going to make a huge difference. I don't know how powerful these are in comparison to all the other guns because I've only played this a handful of times so far. But this is one of the more useful guns. And to have 2 of them off the hop, that's nuts. So again, we're very familiar with these. This is nuts. Very, very happy with those pulls. So we're good. And at this point, what's really cool is I can actually make use of the rivet gun right now. So the rivet gun can shoot a range of 3. So definitely, definitely useful. He's going to turn and try to take these Ravenous out. There's no reason not to. So with my other 4 actions for Arthur, I'm going to go ahead and use the rivet gun. So we're going to be firing away. This gun here, as we haven't actually used it yet on anybody, but this gun is going to give us 5 dice, which is a lot. We can hit on 4s with Arthur, which is pretty good. And if a monster takes at least 1 wound, they're going to be slowed. So that even makes them even less useful when they go ahead and move. Although these guys move twice, so if they're slowed, they're still going to make it to us anyway. But still. So rivet gun, we're going to go ahead and take a fight action. This will be our second action, and because this is a ranged gun attack, I can only choose one of these monsters to take all of the damage. So I'm really hoping to get all the damage on these guys right out of the gate. So wish me luck. Here we go. Okay, so that wasn't the greatest roll ever. So I could potentially choose to re-roll this, although I have a lot of actions to spend this turn, and I don't necessarily feel like going anywhere. I think I'm going to want to keep myself there, because at the end of the day, I may want to... Well, actually, you know what? Now that I have a rivet gun, he might want to run. But I don't really want to gain too much sanity. I really don't. I want to try to kill these things and get some consciousness cards, because I think that would be really useful for him. So what I'm going to do is... This is going to give those particular Ravenous, or one of them, it's going to give them 2 damage. So we're going to go ahead and grab 2 damage, which is like this. And this is what's really cool, guys, about the bases. The bases actually have these little things in the back. So if a monster takes damage and you just want to slide it in, this is one of the coolest aspects of the whole game, is the fact that you can just stick these things in on the back side. And now when this monster moves around the board, it's going to have just the wounds attached to it the whole time. There's so many miniature games that don't do this, and you constantly have to be moving the damage with the monster. That drives me crazy. This is super handy. This is exactly the way it should be done. So there's 2 damage on this guy, but we know these Ravenous... Oh, wait a minute. They are only 2 damage. I was thinking they were 3 because it took 3 damage to kill the last one. Never mind. He's dead. So that was nice. So he is dead with what I did there. Sorry about that, guys. I got a 3 on the last one and forgot I overkilled it. So that's fantastic. So he's going to gain a consciousness card for killing this. Let's go ahead and find out what he gets. So we got Williams Revelations number 3. So this says, observation, I am struck by the ways the sphere vindicates the teachings of the Golden Dawn Church and the drastic ways it proves them wrong. Their focus on freeing the consciousness was regarding higher dimensions was remarkable, considering how such ideas have only taken root in mainstream science comparatively recently. However, their idea that humanity's elevation will come through detached enlightenment was sorely mistaken. Such transcendence can only come through purifying the crucible, and that crucible manifests as abject fear. Dr. William West. You may choose and discard a Devourer effect from the board. Amazing. So we're going to do that for sure. So let's go ahead and discard another Devourer effect. This is good. Okay, so if I wanted to head out from... What I'm going to run into that's going to be a problem here. So it might be worth it to get rid of something in this room now. That's going to be a pain later on. Something position... Okay, so in order for us to get to here, we have to go through here. So this one might be one to get rid of because you just take a straight up wound. Plus, if I have guns, I can shoot 2 and get to this side. This seems like one we could get rid of too. I think I'm going to do it up here. I'm going to actually remove the Devoured effect that's next to the energy tokens for red, because red seems like one of the first ones I'll be able to get to, along with green. So red and green are probably the ones I'm going after first, so I think that's nice. And because we'll probably spend some time in there, potentially moving in, we've got to deal with water. Having Devoured effects sitting in water is nasty. You'll see how the water effects happen, so I think as many as I can get out of there is probably the best thing to do. So we're going to go ahead and do that. So now I've gone ahead and I've successfully resolved that card. So that card's been discarded. Let's go back to Arthur, I should say, for the last attack against the last Ravenous on the board. So we're moving right into the third action for Arthur. And the one thing that's really funny to note is I already did a search action. I had a something useful ability on this guy's card here. It says search. You may reveal 3 search cards. Choose one and keep the others. But I chose not to do it because I was so excited that I got the rivet gun. So just so you guys note, if you were wondering why I didn't pull 3, it's a you may. You don't have to do it. So I got excited and was very happy to get the rivet gun. So I have no complaints. I didn't need to pull 3. I just want this card. And I know that if I pulled 2 other ones and I really like them too, I'd be in a tough spot. What if I get 2 really amazing cards and then I no longer get them? because you're discarding the other one. So I was like, no, I'm happy with the rivet gun. Let's move along. So we're making our third attack now against this Ravenous. We get 5 dice going into it. We're hoping for good things. So here's the roll. Come on, give me 2 damage. Oh no, we didn't get it. Okay, so we only did 1 damage that time. So on his third attack, 1 damage sticks in the back of his base there like that. And we'll go ahead and we'll do this a second time. Now again, guys, remember, I can use sanity. Now normally I would do this because normally I'd be in a rush to get somewhere, but because I need to keep some people back here to grab key codes when they respawn at the beginning of a new round, I'm not in as much of a rush to leave. In most other scenarios I've played, you want to get moving quick, but in this scenario it's different because that code key keeps spawning back here, so for me to be running away would just cause me to come running right back, and I'm just wasting actions. So the first round's a little bit of a slow-paced one, but I am trying to split my guys up and get them moving towards objectives. But I'm not using sanity for rerolls as much, mainly because most of the monsters are not that heavy, and I just don't want to risk. I also want to gain the ability to get consciousness cards, which seem to have really great benefits. So here we go again. This is going to be the fourth action, fourth action spent right now for another attack against this Ravenous to hopefully kill it off. Oh yeah, easy. 3 hits there, so that's way more than enough. This guy is off the board. I don't have any madness, so I'm going to gain another consciousness card, so hopefully it's decent. I got excavation 4, so let's read that. We've been working day and night to excavate the sphere. Its surface is sort of a metallic green, but that description doesn't do it justice. When you look at it, it's like the thing shifts, and sometimes it freaking glows. We're just about finished on the harness. We'll use it as a hoist. We'll use to hoist it out of its tunnel. That's a grammar mistake right there. Then we'll really be able to get a good look at this thing. Could this be proof that we're not alone in the universe? Ronald Myers, Chief Mining Operator at Kadath Facility. You may draw 1 search card. That's good. I'll take it. So, what did we get? Oh, look at that. We got ourselves an ore cutter. That's pretty cool. So, what does this thing do? 2 dice, 5. Ooh, that's... Oh, wow. 4 damage? You got to get a high roll on it, but that's wild. That's really, really good. I'm quite happy with that, actually. That's crazy. Okay, so that was an amazing pull. So Arthur now has another crazy weapon, and this one's melee. So maybe he's a guy that could also pick up a key code now and be quite able to take on some stronger monsters. Oh, this just got real interesting. That's my first really heavy damage weapon, so that's great. Okay, so he has 1 action remaining because he had 5 total. I could move, I could attack, but I have no one to attack, so I'm not doing that. I can't search anymore. I can trade. Ooh, I could trade. Is there any reason to trade? Not really, because I got a rivet gun on Jared already. Nobody else is around, so not really. Resting, I don't have any sanity, so there's no point. I don't need to lock or unlock or reset any hatches. I don't really have any actions on his card that I really need to take advantage of, component-wise, or even on his main player cards, so I really just have 1 action to spend. I'd rather just stay there, because again, if I move, I'm just going to end up having to take one of the damages from this area, and I'd rather not do that. So I'm going to call this a pass, and we're going to move to, that is now the end of all the activations of the heroes. We're moving now to the very, very last activation of this round. The last activation of the round is Putrid. All right, so what does a Putrid do? So first off, Putrid is going to move and attack, and it attacks. It rolls one of those larger die at the beginning of the attack. That's not good. If it gets the jaws, the investigator must discard a search card. That's terrible. So it almost like bites your arm off, basically, or just chews your weapon up out of your hand. It happens to be in a devoured space. It takes wounds. Each investigator in the same space takes 1 wound. So it takes wounds. If it takes wounds, you take wounds if you're in a devoured location. So that's also very bad. Is it the same amount? It says after Putrid takes wounds, each investigator... Oh no, just 1 wound, so it's not that bad. So this is the final activation. We do have a Putrid on the board, so let's find out where that Putrid is moving to. And the Putrid is right here, so he's going to move this way as he's heading towards the entrance marker, which is just off screen right here in the next space. So he's heading that way, but he can't attack anybody. There's nobody that he can see, so he can't make any attack rolls or anything like that. So that is going to do it. We have now fully activated the entire group of monsters and investigators, and now we're going to go ahead and we're going to move into the refresh phase. And we're starting the refresh phase, and the first thing we do is we're going to take all the activation markers off of the characters because we'll be redistributing them out again. Next, we're going to go ahead, we're going to take all of these character activation cards and we're going to shuffle them around. So Samuel Smith here is going to go to the back of the line and everything's going to move forward. So we have a blank now at the very front, which is not fun. We've actually a lot of blanks up at the very beginning. So all of our characters are now. So this is kind of how things change all the time. You have to be always preparing because the order of operations is currently and consistently shuffling around. I'm also going to take these tokens now that I've got them all mixed up. I'm just going to shuffle them around a couple times. Kind of mix them up as much as I can. I have no idea. For all I know, I'm probably shuffling them in the exact same position as they were, and I just revealed one that made it even better. So as you can see, my shuffling skills need some serious work. Oh my goodness. Alright guys, so if you don't mind, I'll do 2 minutes of shuffling tokens. This is fun. Okay, here we go. So let's find out what Felicia gets. A 2, so that's good because I always like it when the first character gets the most activations because I can make hopefully the most use of it. Jared, 2, that's good, and then everybody else is going to be 1 because there's only 1s after that. So Arthur with a 1 and Samuel with a 1. Alright guys, that's going to end it. That was the full first game round as well as rules explanations for the most basic parts of the game. So we did all through a bunch of investigator actions. We didn't see absolutely everything. We haven't seen rest yet and lock, unlock, reset hatch. We might see them later on. Game round, we saw every single phase of the game round. So a new code token will be showing up right here, and one of our investigators that are there or anyone that wants to come back can pick it up and head to the next area to grab some energy. Currently, Samuel's the only one with a token currently, which looks like this, and he's well on his way to heading towards the green room in order to gain a 3, hopefully, to put it on the shuttle and start powering it up to 12 in order for that shuttle to show up on the game board and get us out of here. Thank you guys so much. This one was a bit longer and a lot slower pace for the first round because this was a round 1 playthrough as well as a rules explanation. Going forward, I'm going to only bother explaining rules that are new and I haven't already explained. Everything else that you've already seen in this first round will be done in real time and very quick without any explanation. So if you have any questions, let me know in the comments below. Thank you guys so much for watching, and as always, keep on rolling solo.